Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and the host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Patrice Washington, the founder of the Institute of Redefining Wealth. Patrice, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And I'm just gonna give just a small little snippet, right, for the listeners to know. Like, obviously, you wear multiple hats. You're an author, a media personnel, uh, podcasts. You've been named in Success Magazine as one of the top 25 influential leaders in personal development. You wear multiple hats, and we're gonna get into that. But I want to know a little bit more about yourself and where you're from culturally.
So culturally, I am Belizean American. Both my parents are from Belize. My dad was actually born in Jamaica, raised in Belize, but my mom is Belizean. And also her family is Guatemalan, Nicaraguan, and Mexican. So
Mm,
I have a little bit of all the little, Central American little mixture there. But I was raised in South Central Los Angeles in the 80s and 90s where people would say, "Why does your mom talk like that? Why? What are you guys?" But culturally, that's what I identify with. But I am first generation American.
And is this yourself or you have siblings?
Oh, you want to get into the interesting part?
I mean,
Well,
'cause you mentioned a whole bunch of different places right there, so I'm just wondering
yeah.
if you have any siblings.
So, I think like many people, Caribbean people may identify with this. I didn't know why this was the case when I was younger, why everyone had a different last name. Or why people would
Yeah.
refer to someone as my brother or sister who I'd never seen before. But I do have seven half siblings. I am in the middle, four older and three younger. And I will say, while I didn't grow up with all of my siblings, I didn't grow up, I grew up feeling like an only child. I was essentially raised as an only child. Something that was really important to me once I had my daughter at around 26, 27, was this idea of wanting her to know her aunts and her uncles. And I put my siblings on my vision board. And I
Okay.
remember like I saying, I don't know how this is all going to come together, but I want to make it my business to give us that foundation that we didn't get the luxury of when we were younger. And I can tell you now, 18 years later, my siblings, you would never know that we were not raised together. We moved like
Mm,
we were raised together. I'm actually getting ready
mm.
to go to my younger brother's 40th birthday in Tulum, Mexico, because he wouldn't have it any other way. But we were not
Come
raised
on.
together, so we had to create what we wanted to have with one another,
Mhm.
which also ended up teaching my dad something. Leading into the pandemic, you have an 80-year-old man who has seven children where he was not the focal point, anymore, where we just had our own relationship. And I reached out to him and I was like, Dad, you're getting older. I actually reached out to my stepmother. I said, Dad, you're getting older. And the reality is, you have all these kids who don't feel like they know you. We only know what we know of you through other people. And I want to do like a monthly Zoom where you just tell us stories. So in the last
Mm,
5 or 6 years, we have learned more about my dad's upbringing, our actual family, our heritage, the
yes, yes.
traditions, and all those things that all of us from late 30s up until mid 50s had never heard before.
Mm,
And I
mm,
am so grateful for the work of personal development that I'm known for. I'm so grateful that that was not just a public thing, but that was a personal journey for me because it has
mhm,
changed the trajectory of my family.
mhm. I like how you hit it right on the nail right there when you said that it's not just something you do on the outskirts, like it's also on the end. And it started off as a thought process just for your daughter, right? And you're like, but it could go further than that. And then, like you said, like now all of your siblings are moving together, like you guys were already like you lived together. That is
Yeah.
beautiful, right? The world, no one's promised tomorrow, right? But it's important that we hear those stories. that we find ways of kind of coming together as a unit. And the Caribbean culture is very big on that in general. So it's
Yeah.
it's a blessing to hear that story and how you actually, figured it all out in monthly Zooms. Like think about it. We in 2025, you talk about you telling your father, like, you're gonna have to jump on a Zoom to get this going. So it's beautiful that we're using technology to bring the family together
Yeah.
as well. You know, so when
Yeah.
you look back at that whole story right there, and that was a lot right there. What do you feel is like the number one lesson you learned growing up that you still apply today?
The number one lesson I learned growing up, I have to be honest, it came not from my family. It came from my first grade teacher, Miss Boynton.
Okay,
Um,
come on, shout out.
yeah, shout out to Miss Boynton, who's no longer with us physically, but
Oh,
definitely always with me in spirit. Miss
come on, let's go.
Boynton was the first person that did not diminish my gift, not knowing at the time that my gift would come through my talking, it would come through my speaking. But at the time, I was just getting talks too much on the report card. I was getting talks too much. And in first grade, I was like a very smart kid, very intelligent, and I wanted to have all the answers. Some of that came from being a little starved for attention at home.
Hmm.
So being smart is how I became addicted to achievement because it's how I earned love and people to see me. I didn't grow up with my dad in the house. And then I grew up in a home where my Belizean family on my mom's side, they were just coming in and out. People were coming, then they might get deported, and then they come back. And then it was just like this in and out thing. And that was during a time when children are to be seen, not heard. There wasn't a lot of voice. My grandmother didn't like noise, so I had to be very quiet. So all I would do was read and write. But at school, that was my time to shine. I was going to talk and I was going to raise my hand and answer the questions. And Miss Boynton, one day she didn't call on me and I got upset and put my head on the desk like, how dare she not call on me? She knows I know the answer. First grade. And she said, Miss Cunningham, my maiden name, you need to stay after. You need to stay for recess. So I'm like, she didn't call on me and I have to stay in for recess? This is trash.
Mm.
And I was hot. I remember like just being a little kid being hot. And she said, I know that you know the answers. I know that you are a smart person. I got it. But what good is it for you to be smart and your friends not know? She's like, what good
Oh,
is it? She said, you have a responsibility when you know something to share with friends, and you better never forget it. You have a responsibility to share with friends. So, what she did was throughout the rest of the school year, she knew I would finish my work early and all those things. Instead of me turning around and distracting and talking to people, she used to allow me to get up and go help people. If somebody was stuck, if they couldn't figure out how to read, how to write, do the basic things, she used to send me to go help people. How did this serve me? Well, coming straight out of university, University of Southern California, I founded a real estate and mortgage brokerage. I was 21 years old when I passed the broker's exam,
mm.
and I started this company, and it grew to be a seven-figure business by the time I was 25. And that would have been wonderful had I continued on that path. But in 2007, the recession was beginning. And I took a fall down the stairs while I was pregnant, 20 weeks pregnant with my daughter, and it put me in preterm labor. And it
Oh,
was in
whoa.
preterm labor. I was in the hospital. I'm watching the news every day. The banks are closing down left and right. I have 16 loan officers and real estate agents on my team. All of their deals are falling apart, and people are threatening and all this stuff. And I'm in the hospital on bed rest, and it was my first time I remember consciously surrendering. That is where I learned the lesson that surrendering is not giving up, but it is letting go of the control you think you have. So instead of trying to control the news and the economy and what was going on and what's going on with my clients and their deals, I had to surrender the idea that that was mine to hold. And what made that even more real is when my doctor came in, Dr. Lee, and she said, Patrice, if you don't stop stressing, you will leave here 2 years in a row with no baby. Because the year before I gave birth to my son, it was July 29, 2006, and he passed after nearly 5 hours in my arms. And so a year later, I find myself in the same hospital, same floor, same doctor. And she's telling me, if you don't stop stressing out, we're monitoring the baby with that belt around your waist. You're going to leave here 2 years in a row with no baby. And there's nothing we'll be able to do. And in that surrender, I asked them to take the TV off the wall because I didn't want to watch the news. I didn't even want to be tempted to turn the news on. I didn't want to be tempted. My husband at the time took my phone. I had an iPod with praise and worship music, a red leather journal, and a Bible. And I was like, I'm going to have to believe that this is how I'm going to get through this time, but nothing else is in my control. So there's no point in me stressing over and over and over again about it. So for the next 5 weeks, I would sing my little praise and worship music off tune to my baby. I would write letters to her in that journal, write about who she would be, what she would be like, and then read my Bible. Well, she was born 10 weeks early, but she was healthy. She was born at 30 weeks, 3 pounds, 2 ounces. And I was like, I get to leave here with a healthy baby, not realizing that because I had tuned everything out and turned everything off, I was also going to be leaving $400,000 in medical debt, as well as my company. By the time I came out, I was going to have to start laying people off and making all these choices, and everything that could happen happened. So I went from a 7 figure business to a year and a half later, literally scraping up change. I sold all of my possessions, just about everything, on Craigslist, and ended up going from this 6,000 square foot home in Southern California to living in a 600 square foot apartment in a town called Metairie, Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans.
Mm.
And in that space, now with a year old baby, year and some change old baby, and eviction notices every month. Um, like, we didn't have any deals closing. We moved there because we took the last of our savings thinking we could put it in a property that we owned. Got there and realized the contractor had been stealing all our money. And the pictures they were sending us were not our property. So we
Oh
had
my goodness.
squatters in the property. So we had to go find this apartment to live in. And it was a nightmare. I didn't know anybody there. I'm there just with my husband, my baby, no friends, no family. People didn't know what was
Oh,
really going on with us. It was a nightmare. March 9th, 2009, Paul. I didn't. You ever been sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you had that
oh, come
moment in your
on.
life yet where you just
See,
sick and where you're like, I have brought myself as far
this
as
is
I
it.
can take myself.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I
God, you
mean,
gotta
that's
do
a lot right
something.
there.
I was, when I tell you worn out, the power man came and turned the power off that day while I was in there with my baby. Because we had
Oh,
got been getting the notices. And I took my baby on my hip and chased this man, chased the power man down this little corridor, got out there to his truck. He took pity on me and said, they're going to come back and turn it off. I said, I'll figure it out by then. But my baby's milk and everything I have is going to spoil. I can't afford to get any more. And that day I went back in. My ex-husband ended up coming and getting the baby and taking her on a walk. And I got in the mirror and I was like, now, God, you got to do something. Like, this is ridiculous. I've tried to be very positive through all of this stuff. I'm so used to being the one that works it out for everybody else. I can make the plan, and but every single thing I tried to do in my own strength failed, like back to back to back. And I'm like, this is very hard for the girl who graduated with honors and passed the broker's exam on the first try.
yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah.
used to winning.
Successful business. Yeah, yeah.
I'm really not used to all of this, like all of these things that are happening. So I was crying, and then I was yelling at God, and then I was snotting in like ugly cry. And before I knew it, I was in fetal position on the floor. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, "Get your Bible." For me, it felt as clear as day. I know a lot of people don't necessarily have a reference to that, but it's that still small voice. It's kind of that nudge, it's that internal, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you just
yeah.
kind of led in a certain direction.
Yep.
So I ended up on the scripture, Proverbs 17:16, and it said, what good is money in the hands of a fool if they had no desire to seek wisdom? What good is money in the hands of a fool if they had no desire to seek wisdom? And I was like, well, God, are you trying to call me a fool? Because I'm smart. I've been smart. I've been planning stuff. And
You like
I
you gonna
started,
call me out?
yeah, I felt a little attacked. I felt personally attacked, but then I was like, I wonder if there's what does wisdom really mean? So I start looking up. Well, in the definition of wisdom, they use the word knowledge. So I was like, oh, well, I've been using knowledge and wisdom as the same thing. It can't be the same thing if it's referencing that word, right?
True.
And so I started looking it up. I was like, oh, knowledge is information and education, but wisdom is knowing how to apply it. It is the application of knowledge, how to apply it, when to apply it, where to apply it, with whom. It was the first time I was like, oh, this is why I've been suffering like this because I just thought I was smart. And so I only was
Mm,
leaning on my own strength to figure everything out. I was depending on I'm smart. I figure it out. I don't ask for help.
yeah.
I don't really surrender. I don't, I'm like, no. So all these revelations start coming. Like all of these revelations start coming, these little downloads. And then I look up wealth. What's the real definition of wealth? The condition of well-being. Well, how come we always talk about it like it's money and material possessions? I had never heard that the real definition of wealth was well-being, that it was not money and material possessions until I read it in that dictionary that day. So what's the third thought? You should share people. Why? Because Ms. Boynton said, when you know something, you have a
Mhm.
responsibility to share it with
That's right. Share
friends.
with your friends.
A week before, I had just learned about the term blogging. I was in a Starbucks, not getting no coffee because that was too expensive. I was getting water. I was on a walk with my daughter in Metairie, Louisiana, and we stopped, and these women were in there, all had their computers, their laptops, and their babies. And I was like, what one of them came by where I was standing. I was like, what are you guys, like a mommy group? And she said, oh, we're bloggers. And this is 2009. I was like, what is a blogger? I've never heard of such a term. I owned a brick and mortar company. I had never heard of all these online things. She's like, oh, and she told me what it was and told me about hers. And I remember going home and looking it up, and I was like, why would anyone want to do that? I didn't have a frame of reference. I was like, why would somebody want to do that? But you know how amazing God is? It was just planting the seed of what would
Yep.
come.
That right. That right.
Because when I got up off the bathroom floor and I was like, well, I should tell people, the first thing my spirit said, use the blog. You don't have to talk about babies if that's not your thing. Talk about money, talk about business. Those are the things that you like. And the little devil on my shoulder said, who are you to talk about any of that when you broke and you just had
That's
to chase the
yeah.
power man down?
Mm-hmm.
And then that
When you
other
have to get water
voice,
from Starbucks.
when you have to get water from Starbucks, you just in there smelling coffee, can't drink none. And that other
We that
voice
call
called,
window shopping on coffee.
window shopping on coffee, but that other voice said, you lost all your money, your mind isn't bad. You still know
Mm,
what you know.
that's
So
right. They can't take that away.
what did Ms. Boynton tell you? When you know something, you have a responsibility to share with friends. That was March 9th, 2009, when I was on the bathroom floor having all of this revelation. And ever since that time, about a week later, less than that, I started the blog. It's still up to this day, ugly, scrappy. It's when I tell you it's ghetto, it's so ghetto. But you know what? It'll be up till the end of time because I
Come
like for
on.
my clients to see where I
You
started
started. That is
because you
correct.
have to start somewhere. And number two, I literally do not have the password to whatever AOL, Yahoo account, wherever it was linked to. So it's gonna be up forever.
Uh, okay.
But Paul, because Miss Boynton said that to me, as a child in first grade, it led me to starting that blog, which led me to writing for other magazines, other websites, and then writing for magazines, and then doing radio, and then 4 years on the Steve Harvey Morning Show, and then being a regular on Dr. Oz, being featured in a spread in New York Post and Cosmopolitan and Essence Magazine, writing 5 books, having my own podcast with 20 million downloads, having a community of people from all over the world. So when you ask me what's the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
thing I got from childhood, it came from being in that class and Ms. Boynton teaching me that one, my voice did matter. I just
Mm,
needed to learn how to channel it in the right way. And two, if I always lead with service, I will never not be needed because my heart is always to serve, and the world always needs people who are willing to serve. I don't care what the
100%.
modality is, that's not going to go out of style.
Yeah. No, no. You hitting it. You hitting some stuff. First and foremost, like in a lot of the thought leaders that have come on the show, one of the biggest things that we talked about is like not having a voice, right? The fact that you were able to tap into that in you said first grade.
First grade.
First grade, like knowing that it was Miss Boynton was like, I want you to know that you have this in you, right? Some of us as adults don't even have that as in ourselves, right? So it's very hard to advocate when we're in a corporate environment, or trying to advocate when we're trying to get loans or whatever the case may be from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we just don't feel like we're capable of doing those things. So like to know that there was a sign back then that said, hey, look, you have a voice, you need to use it the right way. The fact that sharing, they always used to tell us as kids, sharing is caring, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be like one of the punchlines, right? If there was a rap group, that would have been the rap right there. Sharing is caring. Um, and the fact that that was a part of it, and I like how you're talking about leading with service, because you're right. The world is based off of services, right? Left and right. And if you lead with it and then share it, and the fact that you were always inquisitive, the fact that you saw those women randomly in Starbucks and you were like, you with your child, like you just want your water, let me get out of here and keep it moving. But for some reason you stopped and you
Well,
then asked that question, and closed mouths don't get fed. So
but
you actually had to
Paul,
say something.
let's take it a step further. The audacity to go into Starbucks knowing that I would desire, what was it back then, a $4 coffee? Now it's a
Yeah,
$30 coffee. I don't know.
come
But
on.
like the
35.
desire, but but you know what? I think it speaks to how we're always being nudged. Like life is always speaking to us and we're always being nudged towards the path, right? We hear lean not on your own understanding, right? And like it was illogical for me to go into that Starbucks. It was illogical for that moment to happen because I was really, what I didn't say, I was really supposed to be on the other side of the street, and I felt called to the Starbucks like, well, let me just at least go get some water. But I was not even on that side of the street, the way it's set up and where I was supposed to be walking.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
my like, I know I don't have the money to be in Starbucks. It's a big street that you have to cross. It seems like such an inconvenience with a raggedy stroller. Like there was just so many things that could have made me
Obstacles
say,
to, yeah, they could have been like, nah, I'm good.
I could have said, no, I'm good. Let me, but it's that everything on this path has not been up to logic. It has very much been many of the things trusting to just
Hmm.
go in a certain direction with no real awareness of why. You might think that you're going into something for one reason. It's like you mentioned corporate America. Sometimes the spaces that we are sent into, they are literally just for a season. We're supposed to go in there and get what we're supposed to
Yeah,
get and get on out. And a lot of
don't take
us
it personal.
extend our stay
Mm,
in these seasons that nobody called us to. Well, I think that God didn't call us to, but we extend our stay in these seasons out of fear, out of
yeah,
not listening
yeah.
to the still small voice, out of external
Lack of knowledge,
validation,
lack of knowledge.
lack of knowledge,
Hmm.
not being able to articulate what we genuinely
Yeah.
desire, what our dreams really are. And then we get in some place and we sit there longer than we're supposed to. And you were really just supposed to be there to get the lesson and to keep it pushing.
Mm,
And that could be a Starbucks for you, but that could also be a corporate job. It could be a city. It could be a house. It could be any number of things
yeah.
where we have to like listen for the nudges that just guide us along the way and trust that that's what it is. Because I think so many of us have not learned to trust ourselves. And that's especially depending on how we grew up, not feeling safe, trusting what we are hearing or
Yeah.
feeling. But that's been one of the greatest gifts of my life is like trusting what I'm hearing or what I'm sensing for myself.
I was literally having this conversation with someone a little bit earlier, and I said to them, they were, in that moment of despair, I said, if you knew the greatness that was in front of you, would you complain right now? They were like, no, I wouldn't. I would just go forward. And I was like, that's the thing right now. We don't even know how great it's going to be on the other side. But I'm promising you right now, if you continue on this path, you challenge yourself here and there, you're gonna see that you're gonna meet those goals that you're looking for. It's just we never know what it's gonna look like. Yes, of course, it's that going into Starbucks and grabbing a water because it's free, right? You know, or it's that long walk home when you like, I don't have a car, right? It's those moments where you're like, you have a moment to think and you're like, why am I even doing this? Why is this lady over here? Why am I asking this question? But when you think about those moments, look how detail oriented. You could say the date, the
Mm.
time, the hour. You could even probably even let me know what you were wearing. Those are like some very, very
Mm-hmm.
crucial times within your whole journey that you will never forget. And I think that's so beautiful because some people like, I did it, I forgot when I some people forgot when they got married. I was like, where's your marriage? I forgot. You know what day? When's our anniversary, honey? You talking about actual date. You said a raggedy stroller. You know exactly what stroller it is.
Yeah, I
So
could see it to this day. Gray
that's
with the little green, light
yeah,
green and light blue little plaid situation on it that someone gave us. Can I
it is
tell you though
engraved.
how amazing though it is? This is why I journal. One of my biggest I think success secrets is not having spiritual amnesia. I journal so that I do not forget where I was in a certain season and how I got through it and what that looked like. Because once you start to, I think achieve a certain level of success or you have the things, you sometimes you forget that you already done been through struggle and but the big stories, you don't always remember the smaller stories or
Yeah,
the
100%.
smaller like
That's real.
moments for gratitude. Can I tell you that and I've been journaling since I was about 18, 19 years old, like keeping journals. Um, and I think it's the greatest gift I'll be able to leave to my daughter. She just turned 18. But in 2023, I think it was late 2023, maybe early 2024. That part escapes me right now. But I'm on a show on PBS called Opportunity Knocks, and it's a financial intervention show. And so, what we do is myself and two other financial coaches, Louis Barajas and Jean Chatsky, we go into people's homes and we help like look through their finances and set them back up for success, like break down whatever's not working, give them tools and support in their local community through nonprofits and through the partner credit unions, CDFIs, and then the show is based on just helping people improve their lives financially. So, second season of the show, uh, they assigned me to a young woman in Louisiana. Now, usually I just get picked up, they kind of give me a little bit, but they don't tell me too much. They don't want us to look the person up. They want everything they film to be genuine and authentic,
Yeah,
right?
authentic. Yeah.
So I'm in the car. So I land, I go to the hotel next day. I'm in the car and they're driving me to her home, which is the set. And they're driving and I'm like, what street is this? What is this area called? Paul, I'm about 8 minutes away from where I lived when I
Hmm.
was in Metairie,
Hmm.
Louisiana, but
I was
she
gonna
lives
say,
in
I was gonna say, it's got to be a connection right there.
the lady, I'm telling the woman who was my driver the story. And I said, when I'm done filming today, can you
Could
take
you
me to
drive?
go find
Yes.
the place? I could not remember for the life of me how to just get there on my own, like, because it's been so many years. It's like 17 years ago. So, or at the time, like 16 years ago. So I'm like, all I know is there's a Target. And if we go to the Target, I know
I know how
how
to get
because I
that
used
right.
to have to walk back.
Well, that's right. It's got
I
to be
had
something
to
like that.
walk back. Do you know we went, boom, hit it, saw the mall where the Starbucks was, where I met
Come
the
on,
ladies who told me that went back, they didn't painted the place that I lived in, but I literally took a video of the corridor where I ran down
the whole
and
way.
chased that man to get
Mm-hmm.
him to turn the lights back on.
Come
Like
on.
to be in that space and to be able to go back and
As a better
be
version of yourself.
as someone who was getting eviction notices, who had a beat up yellow van that only worked sometimes with some of the floor missing, we used to put my baby in her car seat and then just hold her because the floor was like rotted out. No car insurance.
Woo!
Oh, like in this 600 square foot apartment that seemed like sketchy and all the things. And then I go back as an award winning media personality, nationally recognized to the same neighborhood. Like I couldn't even ask for a greater gift, like the gift of that, because I had spoken at Essence Fest before. I had been to New Orleans a couple times, but nothing ever took me to that side of town or to that area. I never even
Mhm.
tried to go back and see it. But there's something about going back and remembering how far you've really come. And I journal, but also being able to go back. I think that that gives you a next level sense of gratitude so that when you start to complain and murmur and whine, and like you said, like, would you complain if you knew what was on the other side?
You would have never did.
You
That
wouldn't.
you
And
you
when
are
you
so
look at it, you'll be like, ah, let me go ahead and shut up. Cause
come on. I got a couple more years. I'll be all right. I'm good. The I must give you a lot of credit right now because some people just don't go back, right? Some people say I'm better than that now. I'm
Mm,
over that. That was a season in my life. But that season was the season that made you the person that you are today, right? If you didn't go through that season and feel what you felt, be vulnerable, go through those hardships, the smiles, the letdowns, the having your baby there in the seat, those days made you the individual that you are. But some people, once they get to a certain place, they say, look, I don't got to go back. I'm done. I don't never got to see that place again. The fact that you said, you're working a job, getting paid to work a job, you're saying to the driver, do me a favor. At the end of this, take me here. You could have
mm-hmm,
easily went back to your hotel room service and everything, sat in a pool,
mm-hmm.
jacuzzi, chill. You would have been good, But you're like, no.
No.
Before I go to my hotel, I need to go here. The fact that you even documented, the fact you put in your journal, and like you said, one of the biggest gifts you could give to your daughter is that information, right? You said about your father earlier that now you guys are on Zoom. You'll be able to walk these stories through with your daughter the minute it happens. There's not going to be a Zoom 6 years later saying, hey, baby, let me tell you about what actually happened. So kudos to you and the movement. Your stories are definitely empowering, inspiring, and you say it with so much joy now. Right? I can imagine what it felt
Oh
like back
yeah.
then. You're like, you know what? I walked down the hallway, I stopped, and there's so much animation behind it, and it lets the person know, whether myself or the listeners on the other side, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And one day
Yeah.
you'll look back at this moment and smile. One day you look back and say, yo, I did it. I did it.
And
And
that's why we have to record things, because if you don't have anything to look back and reference, you will get stuck in the dissatisfaction of today without understanding that Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, um, I love Benjamin Hardy. He talks about the gap in the gain. And he talks about how many of us, when we have a vision, we are constantly measuring ourselves on how far we still are from the vision, from what we, our dream, our goal, whatever it is. But that is looking at life through the gap. When you actually are someone who does look back, give yourself these, not that you're always looking back and just stuck on the past, because that doesn't serve you, but your ability to look back and be like, you know what, I may not be where I want to be, but man, I am so far from where I started. That's the gain. The
yeah,
distance between where you came from and where you are
that's a
now is
lot.
the gain. You
You definitely
cannot
hit
just
those
judge your
points.
life by the gap, or you'll never be satisfied. It'll always be when this thing happens, when, okay, when that happens. People are always chasing after the win. Okay, well, when this thing happens, then I'll be happy. Okay, well, when this thing comes through, then I'll be fine. Okay, well, when this comes through, then I'll get something together. N-
Mhm.
that you'll never be happy. This life is to be enjoyed. This life
100%.
is
I just want to know, as a child, like what was like your dream career? Because
uh
like all of this going on, I'm sitting here like, hold up. Even not even as a child, but even as an adult as well too. Like where was this taking you? Like I know you were going through a lot of emotions at that time, but what was gonna say this is where I want to be in the end?
it's so funny. You're making me realize how many stories I do have. I don't think I always think about
Oh,
it
come
in
on,
this
I'm
context.
ready to tap into them.
Third grade.
Third
I
grade.
got third grade.
Man, you just be going not even like I was 25.
No, no,
Third
no.
grade.
Can I tell you though, when I was young, when I was really young, I used to tell my grandmother, I don't belong here. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles on Vernon and 6th Avenue. It's in Leimert Park. And high gang
Oh,
time.
heavy. Yeah, that's heavy, heavy
I
gang.
was heavy, gang time, which is why they wouldn't let me go outside because there was always drive-bys and there was a lot of gang violence and shootings and,
Yeah.
drugs and all the things, which is why I always had to stay inside. But third grade, I remember at school, my dad came to my spelling bee. And my mom didn't come because she worked really far away. She worked in the hospitality industry and she didn't come. And it was pretty common that she wouldn't be able to make it to things because she worked about an hour away and she couldn't come to stuff in the middle of the day. But my dad would show up for stuff. And there was a girl who said, does your dad have a job? How come he always come to stuff? And I was like, yeah, I mean, but it dawned on me I had never really heard of him having a job. I didn't understand. Like I had no context because I didn't live with him.
Yeah.
I just knew when I had something to do, he would show up, or if I needed something, I could call my dad and I would get it. So my dad took me to Red Lobster because I won the third grade spelling bee. And I said to my dad, hey, do you work? Like, do you have a job?
You like Tommy
And
from Martin.
yeah, I was just, and it was just the most innocent thing. I'm like 8 years old, right? It was the most innocent thing. I was like, because so and so, I remember they were twins, Tiffany and Tasha. I said, because they said that you don't have a job, and
Your
he's like,
father was like, "What? Eating lobster?" Like, excuse me, miss.
and he said, I'm an entrepreneur, and I said, what is that? And he said, I do what I want to do when I want to do it, and I said, oh. That's what I want to be. And ever since third grade, I was just like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what that actually meant.
Yeah, what it
All I
was. Yeah,
knew was that he said he gets to do what he wants when he wants to. And my dad
that was
drove a
it.
Benz. He drove a Benz and he said, I do what I want when I want to. And I said, that's me. That's that's all I want.
And he
So,
shows up whenever.
and he can show up.
Yeah, and he can show up
So
and
all I knew
provide.
is when I get older, I want to be able to show up for my kids. I want to do what I want to do, how I want to do it. I did not have a context of what that means you go to work and do. I didn't understand that for a couple years because then I realized he owned a strip mall and he had all this investment in real estate. But in third grade, once he said, I do what I want, I was like, oh, that sounds great because my mom can't do what she wants. So I want to
That's
do
right.
that.
She can't even be here.
So when I went to USC, I was very clear that I was going to do what I wanted. And it just so happens around that time, in the business school, they introduced the entrepreneurship track. And that's what I did. I emphasized in entrepreneurial studies, which it also makes sense. I got my real estate license at 19 and I became a broker at 21 and started my business during senior year in college. My first clients as a real estate broker were people who worked at USC.
Mm, mm,
They were the people who watched me on campus for 4 years. They literally let me do their loans and help them find their properties, and that is where I started. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire adult life. I've never worked in corporate America.
okay. Where you worked in your own corporate world.
My own version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your own version, your own version. So with all these multiple hats, right? I'm just hearing these stories, and thank you first and
Mhm.
foremost for this continuously sharing these stories, man, being very honest and vulnerable about those moments. Because a lot of times people will never hear these stories unless they actually get to know you, right?
Yeah.
All they're gonna do is see the essence. They're gonna see the podcast. They're gonna see all these things, but they're not gonna truly know. So I'm glad that you're able to share it here on this platform. But across all those spaces, how did you like build your confidence, especially as a black woman, in like personal development?
I believe that my confidence has been built through seeing how what I say impacts people. I don't feel like my confidence genuinely was built just because I thought I was so great. Because the flip side of being Caribbean American, Central American, is that you're not really affirmed by your family. I know many people who also have felt like me, which is, your parents expect you if you're graced to go to school, like to go to school, get good grades, and do what the path is that they think is the American way. And
Yep, yep, yep.
so even though I witnessed my father being an entrepreneur, when I was graduating from college and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to run my own business," my dad was like,
No.
"What the heck is wrong with you? You need to go get a
Yeah.
job," because he technically came here and got a job before he became an entrepreneur. And he was not happy about me not going to business school or going to apply for jobs. Um, so they were not necessarily that supportive. And it wasn't until they could tell, obviously, that I was buying property and doing all this stuff that it was like, oh, she is doing the thing. But then when I lost everything and I was starting over, my dad is the one who used to tell my mom, when is she going to get a job? Now these people
Mm.
not married, but they talk every other day. And so they used to talk about me.
As
And
parents would.
yeah, and so my mom would be like, "Well, your dad's very concerned." And I'm like, "What is he so concerned about? Like, I'm following my path." So my confidence in who I became was not from my family, unfortunately. Like it just wasn't. Um, but I could discern that whenever I spoke to people, something shifted.
Mm.
And for me, it was just like, how do I keep doing that? And so when people would come back and say, because you said this, I went and did that. When you told me this, or when you said this thing to me, it unlocked something in me. So I went in this direction. So my confidence became in the fruit. Like I always say, the proof is in the people. And my confidence in terms of who I could become in personal development was not because of any textbook. It wasn't because I was like checking some lists off. It was because of the testimonies people would come back and say. And I'm like, God, if I could do that for this one person, could I do it for more? Right? And my mindset every day is an audience of one is still an audience. So anytime I
Yeah.
I open my eyes, when my foot hit the ground, I'm like, how can I be a blessing to at least one person today? If it ends up being 100 people, wonderful. If it's a
About
thousand,
that.
great. If it's a
Well, the one
million,
person can inspire the many.
but I'm not even attaching myself to any responsibility for all that. I'm like, God, I understand, especially in this era of social media and all this stuff, that people want you to keep build an audience, build an audience, build an audience. That's beautiful. However, an audience is a crowd of onlookers. I feel called to the people I'm assigned to. Those are the people who come in closer and say, "Hey, how can we do life together?" Like I have people who have been with me now for 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years in some form or fashion. They always make sure that they are connected. Those are my assignments. So I'm not driven by algorithm. I'm not really moved by, how many people follow me today. I'm moved by like the conversations that I have with people in real life and the DMs and the comments and the whatever. And yeah, I mean, my confidence has come from knowing that my voice matters. Like,
That's a great
and
way of putting it.
that goes back to Miss Boynton.
Shout out to this Miss Teacher.
Evelyn Boynton, 42nd Street Elementary School, Lamert Park. Come
Come
on.
on, you. So with this confidence, you build this, you build your own business.
hmm
Uh, right. So talk to us a little bit more about that and the journey and the mission behind it.
So my mission since technically getting off the bathroom floor was just like, how do I share with people this whole thing about wealth, not just being about the money? And it's interesting, even though I came off the bathroom floor with that in 2009, I didn't fully embrace that until 2017. When I got off the bathroom floor, I used scriptures to share money and business principles from the Bible. And that was what my blog was about. And it's so interesting how subtly it happened. Like I can look back now and see it, but once people started to see what I was talking about, and I was naming myself Money Maven and like all of these things, then people started to request me to talk about very specific things in personal finance. So budgeting, debt elimination, savings, that's how I got in Black Enterprise Upscale, like doing all the things I was doing. And it wasn't until like 2017, 2016-ish that I realized I had really strayed away from what God had actually told me to do on the bathroom floor. Now I did things and I made strides and I built this business and it was flourishing and thriving and all those things. But a few things happened. I call it the boulder effect, where it's like a pebble. First, you get a pebble, it's a little nudge like, hey, you need to switch up. Your season is up here. And you feel it, but you're like, but look at everything we doing. Why would we do that? It's going so well. So then life throws you the rock. And when a rock hits your windshield, right? A pebble could hit it and you hear something, but you don't really do anything. No big deal. But that
Yeah.
rock hit and you get a little, it's like
Yeah.
you ever
Get
seen
that
a little,
right. Little
yeah,
spiders, little spider cracks.
the little spider crack, but you can still see. You keep driving, you can keep going. But that rock was a little, it hurt your heart because now I'm gonna
Mm.
have to change this window
Yeah.
out eventually.
That's right. You
But
gotta go through insurance and a whole bunch of stuff going
you're
on.
gonna have to do some things where it's like, so I ended up getting a rock. I had the nudge when I was on the Dr. Oz show that I needed to do something different because we were at the rehearsal for one of the episodes and it was just kind of lame to me. And I was like, you're not supposed to be here. Like, you didn't go through all this to be on here moving pieces of felt apple and broccoli from one little thing to the next. Like, this is not the truth about wealth to you. And my spirit was like vexed, like this ain't the truth. You don't
Yeah.
want to talk about this. So but it was just a pebble, no big deal. Then the rock came. The rock was some company that had a similar trademark who had known I existed for years, but because my brand was starting to get big, they petitioned to have my trademark revoked. And so my attorney was like she started sending correspondence back and forth. And then eventually she was like, listen, this is going to get really costly. And this is a multi million dollar organization. And they will drown you in legal fees and you'll still have to give up the trademark. Like, so is there anything else you could do? And I remembered bathroom floor, truth about wealth, like all these things. And I was like, ah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, but like, oh my gosh, it'll be so much for me to redo the site and do this and do that. And I have at the time, my segment on the Steve Harvey Morning Show was centered around that brand. And it was just so much. And I was like, I don't know if I can, if I want to do all of this. My books had that name. And then the Boulder, I was in the middle of making an offer, um, like for a program that I wanted to sell online. And I woke up one day and people were sending me messages on Facebook. They're like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with your site? Your site is down. Like, my site is down. So I thought maybe somebody just, hacked it and sent it to an unsavory site and we just have to move it back or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
got on the phone with the hosting company on for hours. And the young man is like, you seem like a very lovely lady. I don't know who would want to hack your site this bad, but all of your files are gone. And back then, we didn't have all these external things. You used to house all of your stuff
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
site. So all my videos, all my old programs, everything that I was selling was corrupted or gone. What they were able to restore was a shell of a site, but I had nothing. And it was the boulder. And I was like, God has been telling me for almost a year to let this go. And because I was disobedient, I genuinely feel like it got let go for me. But he let me hang in because I had already been thinking of some things. I just was trying to hold on. That surrender that I talk about when I was in the hospital when my daughter was about to be born, I have forgotten the power of surrender. So I was
Yeah.
trying to hold on because it's almost like I felt like this was the best God could do. Look at all the recognition I'm getting. Look at my life now. Look at everything that I had.
You finally got what you somewhat were looking for.
What I
It's
was
hard
looking
to let go
for.
of that. Yeah.
And I got the lesson real quick. Greater is always available to you if you're willing to surrender and be obedient. When I finally had no choice but to surrender and did, and move forward with this next iteration of what my business would be, um, the Redefining Wealth community platform podcast was built in 2017 because of everything that happened with the last brand.
Mhm.
And it was the absolute best thing that could have
Okay.
ever happened to me.
Okay. Again, you
That
didn't know what was happening.
it freed me to be myself. I didn't even know that I was a prisoner to purpose. Steve Harvey used to call it a pretty prison. He's like, people just think that fame is fun. Fame is a pretty prison. And once you get known for something, if you don't allow yourself to evolve, people will put you in a box or you'll put yourself in a box and you will stay there past the expiration date. And
Mm,
that time freed me. Several months later, I left the Steve Harvey show after 4 years. People said you were crazy. You get millions of people listening to your voice. And my spirit said, but they stumbled upon me. They came for Steve. The people who come to this podcast and to this platform, I will be an answered prayer. Do you know out of several hundred reviews on the Redefining Wealth podcast, many of the early reviews said, I was praying for something and then I stumbled upon this. I feel like
mm,
I have been praying for her. That I had never said that out loud, but that's what people were saying.
that's
And when
nice.
they start saying, "Oh, I was praying for something and I found you," I was like, the fruit is in the people. The truth is
Yeah,
in the people. So this is the
yeah,
path. So this iteration of my business has been since 2017. And it's evolved, but redefining wealth has been the foundation, and it has been the best thing I could have done. And it was also birthed out of a difficult time. The first iteration was birthed out of a difficult time, and so was
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. I love the fact that you are the diamond in the rough. You are the rose that grew from concrete, right?
Thank
You
you.
know, where it's like, it's not gonna happen. That's far fetched. But you managed to do that, and you've always kept faith as a center in a lot of that. You know what I'm saying? Like you might have lost track of it occasionally because
Hmm.
it's hard. When you got the limelight, you got you got everything you're looking for now. You don't got a hole with a car in it. You could actually go into Starbucks and get your whole family some coffee.
Right.
You have a lot of things going for you at that time. So it's hard to kind of not like regroup, center yourself for a second and be like, all right, what's the mission here? Let me not lose track of the mission and the objective not that I've given to myself, but he has given to me,
Yeah.
right? And you got to go back. If you have something worth sharing, share it with your friends, right? So it's like I got to get back on track. So it's sad that those bolder moments do come in, but someone was trying to someone could have avoided this, right? If we would have listened to the nudge, but we didn't
Oh,
listen.
yeah.
We were
That's
like,
what I
ah,
always
nah, stop.
say.
Like
But
I'm
that's
good.
what most of us do. Like,
Yeah,
that's what most of us do, right? And I always tell my community, I'm like, what would our lives look like if we moved when we hurt the pebble?
hundred
And
percent,
that is a
100%.
lesson in an exercise in obedience. The blessings of obedience are beautiful in the Bible. You read Deuteronomy, the blessings are, but baby, the disobedience, when I tell you them curses are so long, play if you want to. Play if you want to. Okay. The curses are
What about
long.
the plague now? You talk about a plague. Your
So
whole
it's like
family curse.
play
Damn.
if you want to, but the really when you just look at it in terms of the number of pages of when they're explaining the blessing of obedience versus the curse of disobedience, it's just like I remember in 2018 my word of the year, my theme was obedience. And how it occurred to me in like prayer meditation was, what would my life look like if every time God said moved, I just moved? I didn't talk back. I didn't straddle the fence. I didn't
That's
hem
it.
and ha. I didn't go round and round. What
You
if
didn't ask the
whenever God,
question that because that's your true coach right there. If
that's
they know better than you, you know what I'm saying? He knows better than you. So I mean, so it's like it's very, very hard to, and when you look around your peers too, they're not doing it. So you're like, well, he's
Mhm.
not doing it, she's not doing it, so why should I do it, right? But again, everyone's journey is different, and the journey is
Yeah.
beautiful, right? If we allow it to be beautiful. You talk about a lot of abundance. You talk about possibility. You know,
Mhm.
what would you recommend as advice? Like I'm thinking about some of these individuals, the listeners that do chime in here on Zaka. They might be in they might be stuck. You know, obviously with a scarcity mindset. What is some of like an advice you could give to somebody? Because it seems that like you get to those places in your life from these stories, but then for some reason something like turns on, the light switch turns on. Like what advice would you give to someone to have that mindset? Like there is a lot more possibility after this.
Well, as you were framing the question, the first thing that came to mind was you're not stuck. You just don't want to take responsibility for the choice. And I think that that is so important for us to discern, because many of us will hide behind our faith saying, well, I'm just waiting on God, I'm waiting on God, I'm waiting on God, or I'm waiting on this, or I'm looking for this confirmation. We're looking for two doves and a rainbow to spell our name
Two
in the
doves.
sky
Okay.
to before we do anything. And the thing is, you're not stuck. Whenever you look at life or your next step from a place of obligation, you will always suffer. The thing is, we always have choice. So I don't look at things through obligation, oh, I have to or I should. I look at it from, what do I want, which is option, which is choice. And so whenever people are feeling stuck, it's because they are in this space of being conflicted and misaligned with what they genuinely want and what they think they should do. And they're
Mm,
looking for someone else to come in and give them the permission to move forward. But if God already gave you a nudge, the pebble, the rock, you're not looking for a coach or anybody else to come in and actually tell you what to do. When people come to me, I'm looking for clarity, I'm looking for clarity. You're very clear. You just don't want the consequences of what that choice is, because you've been taught that other people have to agree. You've been
mm,
taught that it has to make sense to other people. When the reality is, faith is completely illogical. The faith that we choose to have does not make sense on paper.
yeah.
We are making a choice to believe. We are making a choice to move in faith. And the reality is, when you feel like you don't have choice, you stand still, you say, I'm stuck, and then you act confused. No, you already have a next step, but you don't want to be responsible for the outcome, because what if it doesn't look right? What if I fail? What if it's not received well? What if it doesn't go well? Insert any of the things we what if about. The thing is, we stop at the what if and we don't give ourselves permission to see the what is. Because even if you fail at something in your mind, what lessons and what else did you pick up along the path that is actually not a failure? It was a part of the journey towards what you say you want. Everything that has been a hit for me didn't go off without a hitch. Just because it became a hit doesn't mean that it went off without a hitch. So even
Sure.
in the interim, how many people have I had to let go? How many times have I had to hire and fire people? How many times have people tried to steal money from me? How many times? Like, now, those are that's the truth. And yet, I still got to keep moving forward. I still have to trust. I still have to believe. I still have to move forward towards the vision. Why? Because if I believe that God gave me the vision, why would I not expect the provision to be there? Now, maybe I won't meet the proper provision until I go through one of these experiences, because I don't know when a team member is great unless I've experienced a bad one. I don't
Yeah.
know when a service is like right unless I've had a service that was trash, right? Like, some of those things we learn in the doing.
Good point.
Clarity comes in the doing. And so I always tell my clients, clarity comes in the doing. So if you feel stuck right now, take a step
Mm,
with no attachment to what has to be on the other side. Take the next best step that occurs to you. Why? Because that's you learning to exercise your trust in your own intuition and your God given like guidance. You can't trust God's GPS, that guidance, if you're always waiting for somebody else to come in and affirm it for you. How do
yeah.
you know that you can listen to God for yourself? That is a
Mm.
muscle that we build. That doesn't
That's a
just
skill
happen.
set. Yeah, it's a skill set.
It's a skill set.
Yeah, it's a skill set that is not easily obtained. You have to actually go through a lot of um, experiences to really like strengthen it, so that
Hmm.
you get to a place like right now. If something came to you as an intuition, you're like, I'm good. I'm gonna make it happen because you've been through it so many times before, and you're like, you know what? I know there's a message from you above. You're sending something to me, so I'm gonna run through it. So when you look at it now, like you've done so much in your career, you have so much ahead of you, and
Yeah.
I can just tell from just these conversations. I know there's a lot of things you probably couldn't even share in this conversation of all the things that are going to be coming up. But like, what is this legacy that you're trying to leave behind? I know you said to your daughter you want to obviously leave those journals and stuff, but like
Hmm.
to the world, like what is it that the main message, especially for those individuals in those underrepresented communities, first and second generation immigrants?
I think in particular for first and second generation immigrants, I want to leave behind that we don't have to define our success based on how this society has packaged it for us. Like, I want us to know that we can redefine wealth, and that is our well being, how we want to be well in this world, how we can be genuine about who we are, how we can show up with our full voice and our full lips and our hair and our like we could show up as ourselves and not have to continue to believe that in order to be successful we have to conform.
Yeah.
um not in or out of the workplace, because many of us don't practice conformity just in these spaces. We do it in our own lives, even with ourselves, and we don't even recognize it.
Mm,
So it is that when we operate from authenticity, because God doesn't need us to be a clone of anybody else out here, and get in alignment with what we genuinely desire, then we can experience heaven here on earth. We can experience our version of heaven on earth, and I believe most of that is a mindset and an experience that we determine. And that's what I want to free people to believe that that is possible for them. Not that that is a Patrice Washington thing, or that that is only available to certain people who come from certain places that look a certain way. I believe
mhm,
that that is available to all of us, but we have to choose to believe and operate our lives daily as if that is what we believe. And for
yeah.
many of us, that takes a lot of undoing,
Yep.
untying, unlearning, stripping away even things that our well-meaning parents and grandparents taught us.
That is, I was gonna say you got that exactly where it probably come from. It's rooted in there.
Is rooted in there. It was passed down to us. A lot of what we do is generational. Like
Yeah.
it was
Generational trauma.
generational trauma. It was passed down to us. You know, you're formed in your mother's womb. You getting how she feel. You
Yeah,
getting what she
100%.
experienced. You There's a lot that is just being passed down to you naturally, and you have to um
Besides your hair and your skin.
besides your hair and your skin. There's a lot that is passed down to you naturally, and you have to be conscious of that and be willing to say, is this my story? Or is this my mom's story? It is why in this season of my life, I can receive love, romantic partnership in a completely different way. I came from a mother who was never married, who came from a grandmother who was never married, who came from a great grandmother who was never married, who came from a great great grandmother who was never married. All very strong, independent, I could do bad by myself women. And then here I am with my former husband. It was one thing, but now even in in the relationship I'm currently in, and being actively present to the fact that I don't have to struggle and fight with men the way that they did. That was their story. That was their choice. Though, so, and they didn't have the luxury of healing. They didn't have these tools. They didn't have podcasts. They
Yeah.
didn't have all these books. They didn't have
Yeah,
social
yeah, yeah.
media. They couldn't name
Yeah.
narcissism. They couldn't say that you used to just be like, well, you know, he act crazy. Okay, well, now we know.
Now we know exactly what it is. Split personality. We like,
Now
all right,
we
hold
know.
on now.
But some of these things have a name and a diagnosis, and we could be like, oh, that's what that is. Well, now I get to make a choice if I want to participate. I don't get to sweep things under the rug and be like, oh, well, you know, he just act funny. No, I don't have to do that. And so, you know, it's a beautiful thing, the era that we're in, because we have so much knowledge. But what did we start the podcast saying? There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom.
That is correct. Come on, tap in.
And we can't be just information gatherers. We can't just keep collecting knowledge. We have to also practice the implementation, the integration. What good is it to know it if you're not going to own it? And what I want to leave people with is you have a right to own it. You have a right to change your mind. You have a right to question whose story that is. You have a right to interrogate your life and find whatever is frustrating you, take inventory. You have a right to redefine some things for yourself. And there's not a soul, including our moms and our dads and our grandmas and everybody that we love, who can tell us that we just have to go with status quo. No, we don't.
Mhm. Yeah. No, no,
And
you
that's what I want to leave behind. No, you don't.
you have you have locked in. You have locked in today, and I'm so blessed to have had you on the show. The stories that you shared are very deep. It's shaped you into the person that you are, and I can only imagine
Man,
the many more stories that you have not even shared.
I
So
know. I
I'm
need
gonna
another
let you know
book.
in advance. You might have to write a book of all these stories and publish it and let people know the true story behind this
You
woman
might
who
be right. It might be my sixth book. You might be right.
because
You might be onto
this
something.
sound like some um Tyler Perry movie coming up right there, bro. The way you was breaking it down.
Oh my gosh.
I said, hold up. That sounds like a whole movie right there. Right there.
And
But
you're right, I got more.
congratulations again on so much. And thank you again for just being present. And I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Patrice, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow us on our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts.